number of Nebraskans pushing for the state to put an end to abortion. A rally was held at Converge Church in West Omaha this morning. Our Johan Marin was there and has more on the group's initiative.
Nebraskans Embracing Life is kicking off a new ballot initiative called Choose Life Now.
This initiative is all about ending abortion in Nebraska. It proposes to amend the state constitution with very clear language that recognizes the personhood of the child in the womb.
The group filed their initiative with the state back in January. They're now handing out hundreds of thousands of signs and petitions in every city and county. David Zabolski says he's hoping to reach as many people as he can with his group's mission.
Faithful Nebraskans, any Nebraskan, to recognize that we need to extend these protections to the child in the womb who are increasingly under threat. We live in a culture now, our modern culture allows for the chemical extermination of a child.
Meanwhile, Planned Parenthood advocates of Nebraska believe a majority of Nebraskans support access to abortion care. They also believe everyone has the right to make their own medical decisions.
This effort is by an extremist fringe group that does not reflect the values or will of Nebraskans. They have tried this effort before and failed, and they will fail once again.
Zabolski is hoping to get enough people to sign his petitions to get the initiative on next year's ballot. The goal is to get at least 125,000 signatures before July of 2026. In Omaha, I'm Johan Marin, First Alert 6.
For any initiative petition that wants to add an amendment to the state constitution, signatures must be collected from at least 10% of registered voters. Referendum petitions that want to repeal a law only require 5%.